Hello, hello. My name is April Malone, and I am with Yes, I Work From Home, and this is the podcast. Today I have Eric Twiggs with me. He is a procrastination coach, and you're going to have to just tell us more about that, what that is. I had an interview a few weeks ago with Brendan, the speech coach, and he introduced us. So come on in, Eric, and tell us, what do you do?
Fantastic, April. I'm glad to be on your show. So, your procrastination prevention partner. I am the author of The Discipline of Now, and I'm the host of the 30-Minute Hour podcast. And what I do is I help entrepreneurs and executive leaders to ditch their excuses, to beat procrastination so they can make more money, get more done, and feel more confident.
So I like that you said that we're doing the 30-minute hour, because we're actually doing that today. Usually I run about an hour or 45 minutes to an hour, and we're going to try to do this in 30 minutes. So tell me what that means. I'm not familiar with your products, and so you're just going to have to explain them.
So what does the 30-minute hour mean? Yeah, so that's the name of our podcast, right? So you have myself, I'm the host, Ted Fells is the co-host. And so we want to be able to provide just that value in that content. So we want it. So typically, the funny thing is our shows typically go around an hour.
Yeah.
It's funny, but we wanted to feel like it was 30 minutes because of you're like, man, that was fast.
Yeah.
And just really, and when you see the name, it just really makes you think, is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour? It just kind of piques your curiosity. So that's what we were thinking when we named it that.
How did you get into procrastination prevention?
So it really, for me, it started back when I was in college. It was my senior year at Hampton University. And I'm having this conversation. I talk about this in the book. I'm having this conversation with my good friend, Donnell. Now, April, I have to tell you, Donnell and I at the time, we were a little different. So he was all about his purpose and I was all about the party.
Okay.
So he's always giving me a hard time, right? He used to always say, man, you need to get it together, figure out what you want to do. You need to get serious. And I'm like, man, Donnell, loosen up. We have plenty of time for all that. Are you coming to the party with me or not?
Uh-huh.
So several weeks go by, I don't talk to him. And then I get a phone call from his mother informing me of the fact that he was killed in a car accident.
I'm so sorry to hear this.
Yeah. So that sent me the message that maybe I don't have the time that I think to do the things that I need to do. And that's really what started me on this whole journey. And that's really the foundational experience as to why you and I are even talking right now.
Okay. Yes, it's true. Life is short. So you're just trying to pack in as much as you can and be productive. And he was all about purpose. So what is your purpose now?
So my purpose is to help people move forward. I'd like to help 100 million people to move in the direction of their goals. I just want people to don't delay. Because, and my co-host and we always say this, the easiest thing to do is nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So my purpose in life is to help people, to inspire you to move in the direction of your goal.
Now, you do your coaching from home. Are you working from home full time, or do you have anything else that you are doing this as a side gig, or is this your full time thing?
Yeah, I work from home full time. I am in my office, especially with the latest pandemic situation. Yep. Yeah, so I'm on more Zoom meetings than I care to be.
Do you do one-on-one coaching, or do you do group coaching?
I do it all. So
okay,
one-on-one. I'll do group coaching. I'll do workshops with people where they can, we talk about procrastination. I also do keynote presentations at virtual summits and things of that nature.
Well, it's right up my alley. I hope we can do this again then very soon. Procrastination is definitely a thing. And I've had a few conversations now through these podcast episodes. There was one in particular. We talked about fear. It was with Adam Weber, and he's the Callcast. He has a podcast episode every single day, and he talks about fear. And as we were having this conversation, I started to realize, I think that my procrastination is actually a form of fear. Can you talk to that at all?
Oh, for sure. So it's funny. Did you say that? Because when I do the workshops, And we talk about what causes people to procrastinate, and I have them break out. Fear always comes up, and I would say that fear is a leading cause of procrastination. So it's three parts of it, right? You have the fear of success, which is common, believe it or not.
Oh yeah.
Fear of failure is big as well, and then you have fear of the unknown. Probably the number one out of those three is probably that fear of failure. What if I get rejected? What if?
Yep.
What if?
Yep.
And so really the key I've found, if you want to overcome that fear of failure, is to focus more on the process than you do the outcome.
Okay.
You have to focus on, okay, so if it's someone is studying for an exam, focus on the study habits, focus on, how much you're going to read per day, how much you're going to practice, as opposed to thinking about the grade, because the grade, if you're doing the right thing, the grade takes care of itself.
It comes along with the process. Okay. Yeah. I like this. Keep going.
So we talk about, so that's fear of failure. The fear of success is, you know what, maybe I won't measure up to the new standard. It's really common. So for example, let's say I do a presentation for April and it goes well. And so if I have a fear of success, I may say, well, what if April calls me back and I don't have another really good presentation?
Okay.
So the solution for that is, it's a formula I call be, do, have, right? And this has everything to do with what you should be focusing on instead of the fear of success. Focus on, so if I can become more, I can do more. And then ultimately, if I can do more, I can have more. So if you're always focusing on becoming more, you don't fear success because you're ready for the moment. If you're always just focused on getting better and reading and listening to audio and listening to great podcasts like this one, you'll find when that door opens that you're ready to walk through it.
So when you're talking about the fear of success, it does make me think a little bit about the imposter syndrome stuff. Do you come into that a lot as well?
Yes, it's 100% true. I know Amy Cuddy did this fantastic TED Talk, and she talked about this whole idea of the imposter syndrome, where you feel like that, the police they're gonna find out that you're not as good as you're trying to present yourself to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think it goes back to focusing on the process. It's funny, you talk about the imposter syndrome. There's a friend of mine who, she has a PhD, and she will never introduce herself as Dr. So-and-so.
Okay.
She just never will because of that, because she's afraid that they'll start trying to have an intellectual conversation with her and realize that maybe she isn't as smart as they thought in the beginning. So she says that, so when I'm at a social gathering, I never say I'm Dr. So-and-so. I just say I am Lisa.
I see. Yeah, I can see that. Like, I definitely find that I have, I had a conversation with a lady the other day. She's actually an imposter syndrome coach. And I haven't interviewed her yet. I would love to bring her on soon. So I should make a note, to get this done. But it definitely comes up. Like, I sometimes think, well, I had a desk job that I wasn't really proud of it. I mean, at times I was. Like, I worked for Mayo Clinic. I know you actually quote them in the form that you filled out for me. Sitting is the new smoking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I worked for them for 17 years, and it was a prestigious place, as far as the medical community is concerned. But when I'm coming now into this different sphere of, helping people who work from home, I have 12 years of experience of working from home in lots of different capacities. But I still sometimes I'm like, well, I haven't changed the lives of 100 people who work from home yet. I hope to, but I haven't done that yet. So yeah, there's definitely that, like, people might know that about me. I'm pretty open. Obviously, I just said it. I haven't helped 100 people who work from home yet, but I'm hoping that maybe through this podcast, I will. And as we, grow the company that I had this vision for, that we will. But I definitely get caught up in, that, well, I haven't yet, but, maybe it won't work, or maybe it'll all just fizzle out, or maybe I don't know. It definitely is impacting my day. I watched Queen's Gambit with my husband last night. We finished it up, and afterward we were just chatting for a little while, and I was like, things aren't moving maybe as quickly as I would like them to, but I really feel like we're getting momentum, but I can really get stuck sometimes in the mindset stuff. And I never knew that that was a real thing. I guess I always thought that mindset stuff was kind of woo woo or, for yoga instructors or something. I don't know. And now I'm like, I definitely find myself hitting roadblocks, and you have to one day just buckle up and move past it. And then there's going to be the next one. So now this podcast is running, we've got it working. We've got a system to, get it published and everything. Really, I'm enjoying this, but there's the next hurdle. Now that we've got this going, I have got the next thing that's coming up for the new year. I've got some big plans and, am I going to be able to implement them?
Yeah. And so one of the things is we talk about this imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So like I work with people to, I tell them to create a win log. If I'm coaching somebody one, they have to literally get a notepad out and they need to be tracking their wins. So the wins could be something small. The wins could be, I got a great review from a customer. Hey, I sold, I converted this sale. I didn't think I was going to be able to convert. I launched my first podcast episode. And it can help you to overcome that imposter syndrome because you realize, because our mind focuses on what we don't have or what we haven't done. Hey, I haven't helped 100 people. But you know what? I helped one person. And literally, think about it. If you help one person, you could potentially impact their world, and you just never know who that person is going to come in contact with. So I help people to really focus on their wins, and I'd always say, the more you write your wins down, the more wins you'll have to write down.
Yeah. So if you are that person that I have helped through this podcast, please reach out to me and let me know because I would love to hear from you.
I'll tell you what, because with what we do, you don't always get immediate feedback that you're making a difference, right? And I'm like you, I've gotten into these things where I'm like, oh man, I'm doing this. Is anybody really listening? And then every now and then somebody will just reach out to me out of the blue and say, hey, Eric, you know what? I heard that episode and it really inspired me. Or like one time I was at a trade show and I was in one of those moods and a lady, you know what? 7 years ago, I listened to your audio and that inspired me to start my business.
It's reminding me that I should probably reach out to a few people that have inspired me through their podcast because I'm not usually, just like sending them an email randomly, unless I'm inviting them to be on my podcast. Like, oh yeah, I started listening. Oh, I have this guy in California. I've been listening to him for 6 years on and off. And it's about time that I reach out to him and be like, you really inspired me. Thank you for that. Yeah. Eric, can you tell us a little bit about, for those of us, me included, big time, who want to improve the procrastination? I don't know. How would you say, what's the opposite of procrastinating?
Being productive.
Yes. How could someone who really struggles in the area go ahead and make some baby steps towards improving that and turn it into like a lifetime habit of, progress?
So one basic thing you can do, I don't care what your personality type is, I don't care if you're a morning person or a night owl, get in the habit of making appointments with yourself.
Okay.
If you think about it. So here's the problem I would have, right? I would say, I've got this business. I'm going to recruit employees. I need to start hiring. And then, so I said, I'm going to do that this week. And what I would find is it would be Friday at 5:00 and I hadn't done anything because, life gets in the way. So what I would say, if you just get in the habit of making appointments with yourself. So if there's something you're saying that, you know what, I'm going to write an article this week. Don't say this week. Say, I'm going to write an article on Monday at 1:00 and make that appointment. And I
love this.
The chances of you doing it go up by like 80% based on studies. If you've got it as an appointment with yourself. So, figure out what are those priorities? Because one of the things that bothers me, April, when people say to me, oh yeah, Eric, I didn't have time. You had time. I've had to ask people. I've had people. We have a weekly coaching session, the same date and time, and they're like, "I'll list off 4 things they said they wanted to do, and all 4 instances they say, you know what, I didn't have time to do it." And I'm like, "How do you have time to talk to me right now?"
Yeah.
If you don't have any time, well, that's different.
Did you have time to watch Netflix? Because that Queen's Gambit movie or video or show we watched, it was 7 episodes of 7 hours, and we fit that in this week.
Right.
Right. We did,
because that's something that was a priority for you.
Yeah.
That's important. So you're going to make time to find a way to make it happen. And so that's the power of just making an appointment with yourself.
Like physically put it onto your calendar.
Yeah, take your Google Calendar, whatever
reminder
you use, set it a reminder, and make an appointment to do it. If you just do that, and then here's the other side to that as well is, if you can block off that time as your time. So if you the people around you need to know that for that window of time, that's your blog time, that's your website update time, or whatever you've dedicated it to, and they need to hold your phone calls. So if you just set that appointment with yourself, make that a priority, even if it's family time.
Yeah.
Even if it's, I'm going to be with the kids for this hour block. Really make it an appointment with yourself.
I really like this suggestion. And I've probably heard people say it before, but it's really hitting home right now because you know what? If I set this appointment with you, Eric, to have this podcast, I wouldn't have just skipped it or just gotten distracted with, looking at my phone or something because I've had that reminder. I don't want to let you down, or leave you just wondering where I am. And so I show up, right? And if we could show up for ourselves the same way that we'll show up for other people, this is gold. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Talk about daily routines for a minute, if you can.
Yeah, I mean, they're very important. I think the more you can put things on autopilot, the more habits you can create. That's just one less thing that, you have to struggle to do. The goal is you want to get certain things to the point. It's like almost like where it's like brushing your teeth. So you don't have to think, oh man, I got to brush my. No, it's just part of what you do. So one of the things, there's another tool, is a 3x5 card. So I always have this 3x5 card.
Okay, I've got a stack of them over here.
Right, and so I have something I call it the Twigs Top 5.
Okay.
And it just kind of helps you to get into routines and really prioritize. And so what are the 5 critical things that I need to be doing on a daily basis that line up with my ultimate goal and my purpose? Right.
So the recurring things that need to happen on a routine basis.
Right. What are some things that need to happen that, it hasn't become a habit yet?
Okay.
For example, one of those things could be going to the gym and working out.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I'm at a point I don't need to write that down because it's like brushing my teeth. I'm just going to wake up and I'm just going to do it. But for some people, if that's a part of your plan, losing weight or what have you, that's something you write down. And it's just something psychological. When you start writing it down, you feel more compelled to do it.
Yeah.
Than if you just say, I'm going to do it. So that's another thing. And you'll find that you start setting good habits, and then you get to the point where you don't have to write it down anymore. And
you can replace it with the next thing that has been a struggle for you.
Right.
I've learned that a few months ago, I think, kind of when I was getting started with the podcast and trying to get preparing for the podcast, actually, I'm like, man, I am going to be starting a business while I am doing online school with 3 children, which is like a full-time job. I won't lie. I might as well homeschool them. It'd probably take me less time than trying to coordinate everything with all these different teachers and the papers. And anyway, and so I really struggle sometimes when I have my kids home to get my work done. And now I have all 3 kids home and trying to do more work than I had been before. And so I'm like, I really need to up my game and make some changes in my routines. And I have learned that I do really well if I take one of those things that I routinely do without thinking about it. Like I'm always going to drink. I'm really good at drinking enough water.
Right.
And I'm going to drink a little coffee every morning to keep the headache away. So I don't forget to drink my coffee, and then I usually don't forget to drink water. Well, what I did forget a lot was taking my vitamins. And for whatever reason, I have a supplement regimen. It's not like prescriptions or anything, but I just take some things that help me feel better because of whatever. And I had to pair it. I had to say, if I drink coffee, then I will take my vitamins every day. And if I tell myself that, like this little mantra, if I drink my coffee, I need to take my vitamins every day. It really upped my, 80% success, When I come down the stairs, I need to stretch my arms because there's a certain doorway that's just the right size. And I struggle a lot with, if I'm not really on top of that game, I really struggle with upper neck, shoulder stuff just from previous injuries and things like that. And also being a transcriptionist for 17 years, typing. And if I go through that doorway, I stop, I take a moment, and I stretch it. And it really has helped. So what about you? I'm assuming that pairing things together is part of the plan.
That's a good technique to do especially if it's something that isn't desirable for you. Because one of the leading causes of procrastination is something that's called task aversion. Like bottom line, you just don't like doing it. It's just not something that you just enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So, like for example, for me with those tasks is every time I'm going to take the trash out, I'm listening to an audio.
Yeah.
So my wife always looks at me like I'm crazy when I go to I've always put my headphones on when I'm going to take the trash out.
Okay, so you're pairing it with something pleasurable,
right? Because now while I'm taking the trash out, I'm learning, I'm getting better, and I'm still getting the task done. So that's a way. The pairing for me is something that kind of helps me to get through, some of the tedious things that have to be done. So if I'm doing like some type of expense report or auditing something, I might be listening to music. So I pair that, and that makes it easier for me to do. So no, I would definitely encourage people to try to pair tasks, and it kind of it'll help you to get more done.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how you can stop distractions? Because I don't know if I have like undiagnosed ADHD, but I definitely have the shiny syndrome, and all of the things that can just distract me from my task. Like I'll even tell myself I need to do this, this, and this today. And then I will let so many things interrupt my day. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I'll have to try again tomorrow.
Yeah. So one of the things I recommend, because I think I just believe the best defense is a good offense. So you just want to stay on offense. So one of the things, like I try to help people to not, like when you look at your email, right? I encourage people not to check their email off when they come off of a big break.
Okay.
Well, let's say first thing in the morning, let's say.
Yep.
Because what happens is now you're in reaction mode.
Yeah.
You see an email now, got to call this, got to do that.
Yeah.
But so now you're distracted because you're not really on your agenda. So the big one thing you can do is, so don't check your email right after a break. So even if you're taking a 15-minute break to get exercise, don't come back and check email.
Okay.
Come back and really focus on your creative thing. So that's one thing to do. The other thing is just eliminate the distractions, like on your phone. Get rid of those alerts.
Yeah.
Get rid of the notifications,
the sounds and dings and even the badges that.
So check this out. You may have heard this before. There was a study that was done. They studied these college students, and the study concluded that 88% of them could feel their phone vibrating even when it was powered off.
Oh.
They call it phantom notification syndrome.
Wow.
So your phone is so distracting, it can distract you even when it's powered off.
There have been times that I have had to physically take my phone. My husband works through the bathroom in our bedroom, and sometimes I'll just say, can you babysit my phone for me? I have a thing. I have a really hard time powering my phone off because we've had some emergencies in the past where you need to be available on phone. And that was even 20 years ago, but I've never really felt comfortable turning off my phone all the way. And so sometimes I'll just say, if my phone rings, you can bring it to me. Otherwise, it's just taking, my focus away.
Yeah. So basically, like, I don't even sleep with my phone on the same floor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But just for that reason, because I don't want to be tempted to, I don't want to disrupt my creativity. I don't want to be sitting there all of a sudden it goes off and I'm like, oh, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
So literally mine is on a completely separate floor. So I have to go all the way downstairs to get it.
I at least try to put mine at like the foot of the bed, like where I can't just like reach it and start, getting distracted. The light wakes me up. I've worked nights for all these years and I have to be very careful to not disrupt my circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
definitely, like the blue light and everything like that can really affect us. I do use a lot of I use Newsfeed Eradicator for my Facebook, and that helps me not be able to see the feed unless I'm very intentional, and I can set a 5-minute time limit on that. And I definitely have had to remove apps from my phone in the past. And then, I mean, we just went through an election, I mean, I definitely kind of let it go for a little while, and kept up with the news more than I normally would, but I'm trying to suppress that again because I can find myself sitting on my phone for 6 hours when I had 6 hours of other things I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, tell us how we can find you and what kind of coaching you provide.
Yeah, so you can find me. You can go to my website, thedisciplineofnow.com. You can get the book, The Discipline of Now. It's on audio, it's on paperback, and it's in ebook format. You can also find me. I'm the president of this thing called the What Now Movement. So you can go to that Facebook group. We've got close to 1,500 entrepreneurs, executives, authors, and we provide content to help people to pivot. So when you face a crisis, you say, what now? Right? That's why we call it the What Now Movement. You don't just stop. You keep moving. So you can actually go to the What Now Movement Facebook group. It's free. You can join. Like I said, there's 1,500 people in there that are very supportive. And we provide these live videos every day that are 15 minutes to keep you motivated and to keep you moving.
I love it.
And then as far as the coaching I provide, like I said, I do one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching, and I certainly speak at different types of events.
Yeah, I'm looking at your bio, and it's like you've done 28,000 coaching sessions. Gosh, that's pretty impressive.
That's a lot of coaching.
Yes. And you've done a lot with organizations. So if anyone needs a speaker, like a keynote speaker, and virtual summits, you said?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this has been wonderful, Eric. I actually am hoping that I can continue this conversation with you. So we'll be in touch.
Yes.
But do you have any final words you'd like to leave our audience with? If someone just needs an infusion of productivity into their life, what would you tell them?
Here's the thing. Don't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress.
Okay. Yeah. Ooh.
You know how it is. You figure, oh, you know what? I've got to do more research. I've got to find out more. I've got to have all the details worked out before I start. No. Sometimes you just have to move forward based off of what you know.
Yes,
and the key is there is someone who has the result that you're looking for. I don't care what if you're looking to start a podcast, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't understand. I'm not a techie, so I can't start a podcast."
Mm-hmm.
No, there's someone who's less techie than you who has a successful podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
So, for example, you can go on the What Now movement, and you can find one of these people, and they will literally tell you what they did. And they can save you from having to reinvent the wheel. But definitely don't allow perfect become the enemy of progress. Focus on taking the next step, no matter how small it seems.
Wow. Good stuff, Eric. All right. Actually, we're doing a bonus section. Welcome back, Eric. Thank you.
Glad to be back.
Yes. Well, we got it about 30 minutes earlier, and I just had so many more burning questions I needed to ask you. So thank you for resuming. So I've changed my shirt. If you're watching the video, I put the headphone on the other side, but let's just keep going. Eric, what I didn't get to ask you about earlier is your own journey, like how you ended up working from home and what that looks like for you. And honestly, there's a little tidbit that I'm really curious about. Brendan mentioned something about me. He said that maybe he's talking about someone else, or was this you? Did you ever work in the automotive industry?
I did.
Okay. So tell me, how did that work?
Yeah. So it's actually part of my story. So I told you how my friend passed away, and so I knew that I needed to really pay attention to time. Mm-hmm. So after that, I figured, you know what? I need to make as much money as I possibly could. I need to climb the corporate ladder. So I did. And I got to a point where I started working in an automotive field. And I worked my way up to the ranks. I was a district manager. I had 17 locations. I had 500 employees.
Wow.
And, it was a good time. We were winning awards, and, I'm driving the big car. And then I remember this clear as day that, I'm sitting at the light in my BMW. I look at the rear view mirror, and the eyes that were looking back at me were those of someone who hated what he was doing.
Ah.
Right. So what happened was I had become successful, but I didn't feel significant.
Okay.
And I felt like there's got to be more. There's got to be something else that I could be doing. And that really kind of started this journey where I said, okay, what should I really be doing? And I started looking back, and it was always when I thought about times I felt the most fulfilled, it was always when I was speaking in front of a group.
Okay, yeah.
For part of my career in automotive, I was a corporate trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the job I really loved. I remember whenever I would do these training sessions, and I could just do that all the time. And then I got promoted and all this other stuff happened. But yeah, so then I just started pursuing the speaking. I joined Toastmasters International. And then from there, I joined the National Speakers Association. And then here we are.
Okay, so what was the timeline for all of this? Did you go to school expecting to be in the automotive industry, or is that something that just happened from your business?
Oh, it just happened. So like right when I graduated from college, they offered me a position, and I just figured, okay, I'll do this for a little while until something better comes along. And then every time I'd be close to leaving, I'd get some type of promotion. But you know what? I don't think that I don't think that's an accident, right?
Yeah.
I just think things happen for a reason. And I mean, literally, I've never forget, I got this position like right when I was like 5 minutes away from, I ended up being like 5 minutes away from where I lived, and it just worked out. But yeah, so I spent time in the automotive field, but I think that was all by design to really help me to get to where I am right now.
It gave you that speaking opportunity. Now, what did you study in school?
I was a marketing major.
Okay, I can see that. And then you just really enjoyed the teaching aspect, and you decided, how can I run with this? So how did you get from teaching in the industry like that to deciding on procrastination as your topic?
Well, so first off, I'm your procrastination prevention partner. But from the time I realized that I should be speaking, that was like 3 years.
Okay.
From the time I realized that I should be speaking, to the time I actually started. That was like a 3-year time window, because I kept talking to myself like, okay, who's going to bring me in to speak to their organization? What am I going to say that hasn't been said already? So I had all of those questions running through my mind.
The imposter syndrome we talked about.
Yeah. I mean, so I procrastinated, but then finally I took that step. I took the step of joining Toastmasters. And then when I joined Toastmasters, I met someone who trained professional speakers. And then I took that step. And then after I met that person, I met someone who was in the National Speakers Association. And then I joined the National Speakers Association.
Yeah.
And then when I took that step, I met someone who ended up writing the foreword to my book.
Okay.
And so all of these steps just started coming up, but they didn't start revealing themselves until I started moving forward.
So move forward and things might reveal themselves.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. No, I mean, like I said earlier, you can't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress. And a lot of times you don't know what the next step is. But once you start moving, you start to see what to do next.
Right. Did you spend any time, were you able to do more teaching and coaching in the automotive industry once you decided that's what you wanted to do? Or were you just kind of like stuck in that job, turning the wheels until you could be released to do what you wanted to do?
It just basically was in that same district manager position. Now, I mean, there were elements of that job that involved teaching. So, there were times where I'd have meetings and I would teach on a certain selling process. So, yeah, I did get to speak to a group. But the funny thing, though, is you were asking, how did I end up talking about procrastination? I would have a coach and the coach would always tell me, it's interesting, like all your speeches involve time one way or another. So like even back when I
Oh.
was, there was always some aspect of, we got to do it now. You can't wait. You gotta pursue your purpose. You don't procrastinate.
Yeah.
And because I was trying to, when I was starting to get into the speaking space, figure out, okay, what's my niche and what's my lane.
Right.
And then the person kept telling me, you seem to talk about time a lot. And every speech I hear from you has got some element of time management in it.
Wow.
And then, so whenever if I created a product about overcoming procrastination, it flew off the shelf. It was the craziest thing. I mean, if I went and, people literally I would do a trade show. I'd have the product at my table. Oh yeah, I need that. My mother needs that. My relative needs that, So those are just kind of signs that this is what I should be talking
about. That's amazing. I love it. And how long have you been doing just the coaching now?
So I started this in 2011.
Okay. Oh, so you've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of hours were you working when you were in corporate, and what kind of hours are you working now?
So when I was in corporate, it was 60, 65. But it would be, Saturdays, Sundays, just things just would come up.
Okay. Yep.
Because I had 17 locations. So something could happen in one of the locations. Mm-hmm. Could be on a Saturday, could be on a Sunday.
On call.
You were just kind of on call. The vice president of the company could be visiting one of my stores at random. Because that's what they did. They would just do unannounced visits.
All right.
So it was just nonstop. Mm-hmm. So now, as far as my hours, I would say probably 40 to 50 hours a week is probably how much.
And is that what you want to be working?
Yeah, usually it's just how it works out based off of things I've got to do when, especially if you factor in just the I do a lot of interviews on podcasts and I'm doing things for my podcast. Mm-hmm. So there's, and combined with coaching, combined with speaking at virtual summits and things like that. So
I'm always curious to hear how people, because I want to make that distinction, like how many hours are you working and what do you really want to be doing? Because some people they like to keep their life full in that way, keep busy, and that's their enjoyment. And some people would feel burned out at 40 to 50 hours and they need to reduce it. And so I was just curious, how that works for you, especially as a procrastination coach.
Yeah, I think it's better to, you have to understand there's a difference between being active and being effective. Yeah. So it's very easy to think that you're doing a lot of things but you may not be being effective. I feel like the things I'm doing are the things that I should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about home life and how you manage your household stuff compared to your work? Because that whole work from home thing is a big deal as far as you're in your space right now. And I know you got up and you closed your door. I don't know if you have household members or not, but
oh, yeah.
Here, we've got 3 kids. My husband is off work today. And it was I'm going to try to sneak in another episode today because, he can manage the kids and keep them out of this office, which I'm in a closet, by the way. I always like to mention that. And, otherwise it gets a little bit tricky as far as fitting in my work and getting interrupted by, my kids have real needs. Sometimes their computer won't work or, their teacher needed me to come and talk to them or something like that. So I'm pulled away a lot. How do you manage it?
Yeah. So the challenge is, especially when I first started, really working from home, you tend to work more. I found that I was just working more, but I'm like, oh man, you know what? I can start earlier. I can stay later. I don't have to worry about traffic. I can just keep going. So sometimes I'd start at 6:30 and be working into the evenings. And then my wife would be like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yep.
I haven't seen you.
I hear you.
So I had to really get to a point where I set a clear start time and stop time.
Okay.
And then and I think that's very helpful if you work at home to really just kind of set that time where this time I'm going to start, this is the time I'm going to stop, and then really making a point to be present, with the family when I'm with the family.
I think that so much of it has to do with personalities, because some people are aiming to get maybe the fewest amount of hours into their work week with the same results. Some people are really saying, I want to try to get the sorry, I'm like trying to talk in. Some people are trying to get as many things done in a work day in as few hours as possible, and so that they have like the rest of the day to be free. And other people are like, I just can't stop working, or like for me, I have to rearrange my schedule around like the family needs. So I was trying to work a 9 to 5, while my kids are going to be at school this year, and then the pandemic came, and now I'm trying to like squeeze in as much as I can before they have to wake up and go to school, and as much as I can after. And so that does eat into that family time. But I have
Oh,
young
sure.
children too, so
Yeah. So like, my son is 7, my daughter's 10.
yeah.
So yeah, there's certain times I need to help with homework.
Hmm.
So that's one reason why I need to shut it off. So I'm helping with homework. We're scanning work. We're in a virtual world now where they're work. Yeah, I see
It's
you
more
shaking
work
your
for
head.
mom and dad.
Right. So you're the teacher and you're the parent.
Uh-huh.
So you're dealing with that dynamic. But I tell you, I mean, balance is key, and I think people misunderstand what balance really means, right? So balance isn't necessarily working less. Balance could be working more, but balance is the idea that you're not neglecting other areas of your life, right? So everybody, like in my house, they understand that I'm pushing, to get to a certain place with, the book and the coaching and everything else. So for this season, I need to be working more, but when I'm not working, I'm fully present with them. I'm
Good.
not neglecting them.
Hmm.
So, there's times on the weekend we'll just go somewhere where we can.
Yeah.
We'll get away. We'll do something, and where it's about them.
I like it. My schedule just shifted a little bit again. I have a virtual assistant, and he was working in his nighttime hours, which would be my daytime hours, and we just switched him. So he's working days, and he's coming in right after my kids finish school. We're starting to work together. And so I can get some things kind of prepared for him during the day, and then he can take over, and we'll chat here and there a little bit. But what was a little bit unexpected, I forgot that if he switched to his daytime hours, that means that he would be starting on Sunday with
Hmm.
me. And a lot of people don't like to work on Sundays, but actually I kind of like having that Friday off, because then my husband is, off of work, and we usually have like a Friday night movie night or something like that. So my weekend is now basically Friday evening through, Sunday afternoon. And I'm kind of liking the shift. It's a little different, but it's working.
Awesome.
So, do you have anything else you want to wrap up from where we left off this morning? I don't know if you remember our conversation.
Um, so I mean, it's just something else. I think clarity is the starting point of success. Right? I think it just really helps to be clear on where it is that you're trying to go,
Hmm.
and that can even help as it relates to balancing all the dynamics of working from home
Right.
and keeping everybody on the same page. Um, and then so the key thing too, from a working from home standpoint, is that sometimes different members of the family perceive working from home differently.
Yeah.
Like some people work from home, they don't really work from home. They're just kind of at home. They don't have to really check in.
Right.
But then others, like myself, let's say when I'm working, I'm actually on coaching calls. I'm this, I'm
Hmm.
that. So
Appointments.
yet that we have to understand everybody's boundaries.
Hmm.
I think that's key.
Yeah, I worked for I think it was about 10 years from home for the medical industry when I was doing medical transcription, and we had to clock in and clock out, and like we had to basically schedule our lunch around, to make sure that we had coverage, because we were working for the emergency department, and typing emergency things, and emergency things. Yeah, we were typing like emergency notes, and also like surgical things and clinical things for the hospital and the clinic. So there was a lot of talk about coverage and when you could take your break, and had to get permission if you wanted to extend your time. And so people, I think, had the idea that I had like this laptop, I could work in coffee shops kind of job, and I didn't. I was basically tied to my computer, in my office that time. And so now I'm kind of moving into something where I can take my laptop and move somewhere else. I can go on a vacation with it. What about you? Do you ever travel while you're working?
Not as much lately.
Oh, obviously.
But there was in the past I have certainly.
And were you doing this intentionally from home, or did you ever have like an office space once you started your coaching, procrastination prevention?
No, I've been home for a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about your partner, your wife? Does she also work, or how does that work for you guys?
Yeah. So I mean, she works, but she's home too,
Mm-hmm.
which helps because the kids are home.
Yeah. Same.
And yeah, so she can spend a lot of the time helping them with different homework lessons and making sure they're set up on their computers and all that good stuff. And then I kind of come in afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. We do a lot of juggling back and forth. Like when he takes his lunch break, he's helping, and I get my break to come up here and do something. And yeah, it's kind of constant, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
What do you struggle with when it comes to procrastination? Now that you were like the guru, right? You've been speaking on this for 9 years now. Have you mastered it all yourself, or where do you continue to lead?
Well, I think so. The title of my book is The Discipline of Now. I think I always just have to make sure I've got the right disciplines in place.
Yeah.
I would say my biggest procrastination challenge is the whole thing of perfectionism.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted that I can easily slip into that.
Oh yeah.
But I just have to monitor that. So even like I ran into that when I was writing the book, where I would try to write and edit at the same time.
Okay.
As opposed to just, get the ideas out on paper, no matter how bad I think it sounds, and then go back, go back and edit. So that's something I just always have to be mindful of. If I'm not, I could slip back into this whole perfectionism thing.
Right. I know we're in November right now, and it's the novel writing month where people are trying to do 50,000 words or something. I can't even. I haven't participated. I don't write novels, but do you have any other books in the works now, or one and done?
No, actually, I'm actually working on a project with my partners. The president of this What Now movement. We're coming out. There's a book that's going to be coming out. It's called The What Now Mindset. Okay. And we're interviewing people that have overcome these challenges. And instead of stopping, they've said, what now? And so we talk about how to do that. We provide tools. So that'll be coming out towards the end of the first quarter of 2021.
Oh, fun.
So that's the next book project that we have going on. And then I'm going to write other books down the road.
I actually did look it up, and I could find it on Amazon, but is there a better place for people to look for your book to buy?
Yeah, they can go to thedisciplineofnow.com.
Okay.
They can get it right directly from the website as well.
It's a good place to get it. And you mentioned a couple of Facebook groups earlier, and the one that you were telling me about, is that one that you have started, or is that part of, you said you have like a network of people that are doing the...
Yeah, that's the one I started it. It's the What Now Movement Facebook group.
Yes.
And so I'm the head of it. And the whole point of the group is to get people to pivot when they face a challenge and not just stop. Okay. And so we provide, Monday. So it's like every day is themed in the What Now Movement group. So Monday is Motivational Monday. Somebody will get in and talk for 15 minutes on a motivational topic. Tuesday's Time Management Tuesday. They'll talk 15 minutes on that. Wednesday's Wellness Wednesday. Thursday is Thankful Thursday. Friday is Fitness Friday. So we have that. So there's tools. It's very encouraging in the group. It's a good place to collaborate, network, and so that's the group.
Sounds like a lot of things that I want to have in our community here too. So we'll have to chat a little bit more about that.
Absolutely.
Do you find that you have a lot of people in your group that are entrepreneurs, or do you have a mix of people who are employees working for a company versus the, small business owners or entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's a mixture. So we have entrepreneurs, we have people that are career professionals. Maybe they've written a book, so they're promoting that, or maybe they're a podcast host. But then we have people that, have businesses and they have jobs, but they're trying to make the business the full-time thing.
Yep.
So it's a mixture.
Yes. So same with this audience, and sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge to find information or help that will be applicable across, both worlds. But I'm assuming you're probably pretty good at bridging that gap.
Yeah, we're learning. We're starting to learn kind of what, and you kind of see what people respond to every now and then. We put little surveys out as far as kind of what are people looking for, and then we kind of take it from there.
Well, let's wrap this up. I appreciate you coming back on and kind of helping round out the conversation that we started with earlier. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add as far as, actually, I don't think I asked you this question yet. I asked you earlier, what do you have, advice, but do you have any products that you recommend that have helped you in your work from home experience, either digital tools or physical tools?
So I know there's an app, it's called Rescue Time.
Yes.
It helps you to track like how much time you're spending on different social media sites. So it helps you to be more productive because you can see, hey, I've been spending 3 hours a day on Facebook. Maybe I need to cut that off.
Yeah. No, I have screen time on my iPhone and it has a little bit of that, but I find that I just ignore it. So how do you use the Rescue app like to be more productive?
Well, so like I one time I had it on my phone, but now I just have where I can look at it on my desktop where you can see what percentage of time you're spending where.
Okay.
And then it's just me seeing it, it can help me to make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah.
And they've got a setting where you can actually turn off access after a certain time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty serious.
Yeah. I use the Newsfeed Eradicator. I think I mentioned that earlier for my Facebook, but I noticed the other day that you can now use it for a few of the other social media platforms. And you can also like snooze the blockage that they have for like 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes or 10 or 15 or 30 or whatever, but then it'll turn off again. And it just gives you an inspirational quote to get back to business. Yeah.
There you go. So the other thing, I think you mentioned this too. So I have a virtual assistant.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, she makes it, I can get so much more done with, her name is Esther. And, and the good thing is she thinks of things, before I can even think of it. Sometimes I'm like, what, I should have it. And I look and she's done it already.
How long have you been working together to get to this point?
Well, it's only been a few months actually, but it's just, some people that you come across, they just kind of get it.
Yeah.
And she's one of those people, fortunately. So yeah, she helps to schedule my interviews. I use Google Calendar, and so she basically manages my calendar. So if, the general process is if someone wants to interview me for something, they talk to her, she looks at my calendar and, if it works, she schedules it. And so I can just basically look at my calendar and know what I've got coming up.
I think I actually did schedule with her. I think she popped in and told me what time that would work well for you. So
yeah.
And how about physical products? Do you have anything like, I know a lot of people use planners or like bullet journals and things like that to like manage their time. Are you into those things or not so much?
Not really. Like I said, just having the calendar and having the virtual assistant, every now and then I'll use Evernote. That's something I use and I like it just because I can talk into it, and just kind of make notes for myself, if I need to.
I can't think of, I was thinking OneNote, but what is Evernote?
Evernote, same concept. So basically Evernote is where you can take notes, but it can be, it's an app. So it can be on your desktop, it can be on your smartphone. So a lot of times if I'm listening to an audio book, let's say, I'll have Evernote up, and then so if there's something that's said that I need to remember, I can just record in the Evernote, and then now I've got the information that I just heard in the book that I wanted to capture.
Oh, wow.
Or if I'm out somewhere and I don't have access, I can't get right to my 3x5 card. Yeah. I can just put it in Evernote.
Is it a audio thing or you just type it in?
Both, either one. So you can if you prefer to type, you can type, but you can also just hit the little microphone and like just talk it into your phone.
Voice dictate it in.
Voice dictate. Yeah. Oh, sure. Okay. And you always, like I said, you always have it, and I can go back to it. So if I read a book, 4 months ago, and it was a point that they said I can always go back to my Evernote and see, oh yeah, there you go.
Good. Yeah. I think I use the notes. I use a MacBook and an iPhone, and they can communicate, and I use notes in a similar way. But yeah, it's nice to have that search feature where you can like search for keywords and find things again. I'll have to look into the platform and see how that works.
Yeah, it worked very well. I like it. Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful. I felt like I had one more burning question that I didn't get to, and I'm going to try to conjure that up really quick. Oh, yes, your book. Who is the book for? Like, who will best learn, or who will learn best from your book?
So the entrepreneur or the executive leader, that entrepreneurial person that's
Mhm.
looking to go from good to great.
Okay.
That's really kind of the ideal person that's going to benefit.
And is
You've
it
got to.
mostly mindset stuff, or is it more like hands-on
Oh, it's
productive?
both. So you,
Okay.
you have mindset things, but then you got specific tools and specific things that you can do depending on your personality type, depending on your circadian rhythm. If you're a morning
Mm,
person, if you're a night
yes.
owl.
Or a
So
night
one of the
person.
things, yeah, one of the things that just frustrated me to no end with some of these books, it was just all the same cookie cutter information. It was
Yep.
all, oh, you got to wake up early. You got to wake up at 3:30 in the morning. You know,
Actually, I do, but that's because I'm teaching at that time.
no, I wake up at 4, but not
Well,
everybody is built that way.
yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah.
times, and you feel like a slacker if you don't wake up at 4 o'clock and run and do like all the stuff that I do. But that's not
Yeah.
how you're wired.
Right.
You could be a night owl.
Mm-hmm.
That's your circadian rhythm.
Yep.
But really, and I talk about this in the book. So the bottom line is to schedule your high priority activities during the time of day when you've got the most energy. So yeah, so basically, so that's it. So you can find tools within the book. Whether you're a morning person, whether you're a night owl, if you're a type A personality, if you're more analytical, you will find a tool to help you to overcome procrastination.
I feel like I'm glowing because I'm so excited that you're recognizing that not everyone has that 9 to 5 job and that 9 to 5 rhythm. Because when I worked for, those 10 years doing that transcription, I was working nights. It was 11 p.m. to 9 a.m. or, terrible hours. It's terrible for your health. And then now, in the more recent years, I've been teaching English in China. So I'm on their schedule. Their prime time hours are, start at 4 a.m. here, and I would be getting up at 2:15 sometimes to teach a little bit earlier. So, yeah, basically all of that stuff didn't apply to me because I was constantly trying to find like sleep hacks and, how to fool my system into, getting tired and vacations. I felt like I was jet lagged, every single day or every single week.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for acknowledging that not everyone has that same exact schedule.
Right.
Or just some people are just morning people naturally or not. So,
Yep.
Good. Well, I know that we still have more to talk about, but let's call this for now. I think we're right around an hour. And I appreciate your coming back and doing part B of this conversation.
Yeah, appreciate you inviting me back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Eric. And this is Yes, I Work From Home. I'm April Malone. This is Eric Twigs with an S at the end. I apologize. I took it off earlier, but all right. We'll see you next time.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.